everyone should write, but not everyone should publish. And here's the thing about this situation is that message came really, really clear to me, and I wanted to write, but I had this question that was still came up right after I thought about I should publish a book. Next slide. And here's that question. Who's gonna listen to me? And so I wonder if you've ever been told that you should write a book. I love the things that you say. I love your content. I love your system. I love your message. Or you have all these stories and people love that when you present, they're like, oh my God, you should put all this in a book. And then you think to yourself, yes, I should write a book. That is a great idea. And then the next thought comes to you, who's going to listen to me? And that's been, you definitely put that in the comments. Have you ever heard any of that come to you like, who's going to listen to me? Why would I write a book? No one's going to read my book. You're not alone if that is you. Next slide. See, there's a survey back in 2002 that revealed that about 81% of Americans wanted to write a book. But here's the other piece of that it didn't necessarily say in that survey. The truth of the matter is that less than 5% of the Americans ever actually write a book, okay? Less than 5%. But even deeper into that is that less than half of that 5%, less than half of that 5% ever get published. And the thing we're talking about here is that for most of the time, people are trying to get published traditionally. And I don't want you to understand, you don't have to get traditionally published. You don't have to sit there and wait for traditional publishing for someone to say that you're good enough to go ahead and get your book published. So as we're going to move forward from here, I want to remind you, there's some questions I'm going to ask you. So when you see this on the screen, you see these two people talking with a little check mark, that's me checking in with you, and it's a sign for you to respond as we go forward, okay? So we're going to go ahead and take to the next slide. Here's your first question. What about you? And I want you to answer the next two questions honestly. And that means whatever hits your gut first, that's what I want you to respond with. Put that in the comments here. Now, I don't need you to write your life story to these questions. Just go ahead and save that for your book when you get that done. But I do want you to answer these questions. The first one is this. How long have you been thinking about writing a book? You can go ahead and put that in the comments. How long have you been thinking about writing a book? And Ryan, you can tell me if there's any of the responses there as they come up. The second question here is, until today, what has stopped you? What has stopped you? And while you're putting those in the comments, go ahead to the next slide there, Ryan. So here I want to tell you what we're going to cover here today. Today we're going to cover, we're going to talk about self-publishing, and of course we're going to talk about the 9 mistakes that beginning authors make. And I'm actually going to give you 10 mistakes, but we're going to talk about the first one very, very soon here. But the thing here is that although the odds of getting traditionally published are low, that doesn't mean that you cannot become a published author. It does not, again, mean that you cannot become a published author. Amazon is the epitome, the top level of the booksellers for ebooks. And what they're doing, they have about 85% of the market, and they have been actively pushing for more content, meaning they're asking you to put your book onto their platform. But here's the thing. I really got to help you understand why self-publishing is the better option than going through traditional publishing. I'm not saying traditional publishing is bad, just there's a better option for you to get started. Then we're going to go through mistakes 2 through 4, which are talking about turning off autocorrect. I know the question is like, what does that even mean? You got to wait. We're coming to that. The next section will be mistakes 5 through 7, which are showing no mercy. What does it mean to show no mercy as you're writing your book, and how is that affecting writing a great book? The last mistakes 8 through 10, I'm going to ask you to listen to wealthy authors. And I'm going to break down what that means and what happens when you listen to wealthy authors. You'll see some results that come about as you do things that wealthy authors are doing, and stop trying to do it yourself and figure everything out. I did not figure everything out myself. Go to the next slide. I did not figure everything out myself. Before we get to my story, though, I want you to really understand here that why you should self-publish now. Now, there was a study in 2017 by the Authors Guild that showed that the annual book sales have decreased by 42%. Okay? And what they're saying there is that the authors reported less than $4,000 in annual book sales. That is ridiculous. People have books that can change the world, but they're selling less than 4,000 books. Now, if you went to a traditional route of getting published, then that's not good. You can't do anything. They're not going to help you. They're not going to push and mass market your book because you're not making enough sales. However, if you are self-published, you can still continue to push past making $4,000 in sales, because $4,000 in sales doesn't mean your business has not made $400,000, $4 million in sales hasn't led to that. Because we're going to talk about some people that have a person that has made millions of dollars from writing a book and then writing another book. Every time that he's written a book, he made more money. Now, here's the thing. A book is only the gateway into your world. It's only the gateway into your world. So if you are traditionally published, there's some things that you're not going to be able to do. You're not going to be able to control all the content. You're not going to be able to control what your cover looks like. You're not going to be able to control how much money you make from the book. You don't have any of that control. But by self-publishing, you have a lot of rights that you are able to do for yourself. You control everything about your book. Now, the problem is, if you don't know what you're doing or have the guidance to help you get it done, you're not going to do things the right way, the most proficient way, efficient way, effective way, and make an excellent book. Next slide. So here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to make a commitment, because if you're on here, you obviously have some ideas about either writing a book or writing your next book. So I ask you to make a commitment right now. This goes into mistake number one. Mistake number one is that people are not committing to finishing the manuscript. I want you to commit right now to finishing your manuscript. I'm not talking about sometime in the near future, in the next couple of years. I mean, I want you to commit to finishing your book this year. See, the solution here is to have everything set up properly, and that means part of that means to set a date and be accountable to someone. Be accountable to someone. Now, one of the things is, as I talked to Ryan before we got started here, one of the ways that I help people get accountable is that as my authors get to a certain point in getting their book ready, we have a thing in Amazon where we can go ahead and do some pre-releases for your book, which means you set a firm date in Amazon when your book's going to release. Now, there's nothing like having a firm, committed deadline, or what I like to say, actually a finish line for when you want to get a project done. And on Amazon, you cannot change that date, which means you're going to get that book done. And every one of my authors gets their books done. And so far, we've had a 100% bestseller status for each of my authors, right? But that requires you to make a commitment from the beginning. So I'm asking you to make a commitment today. Make a commitment to yourself. You can make it to me. I love to see it. And you say, I commit to having my book done this year. Next slide. Let me tell you about some of those ideas here about what it means to becoming an author, because when I ask you to make this commitment, I'm asking you to embrace being an author. One of the things that I did about when I was trying to embrace being an author is I made a post on the social media about me becoming an author. I kept saying, I am an author. I am the author of an upcoming book. I did things such as I took a PDF of the cover that I was having created for this book, and I put it on my Kindle so that every time I was flipping through my books to read another book, I saw my book cover in my on my shelf and my Kindle. The book wasn't done, but I was getting that visualization. I was seeing, I was reinforcing the idea of becoming a published author. That's what it means to embrace being an author. You're not doing anything that says no to you being an author. In fact, you're doing something even more by telling the world I'm the author of an upcoming book. In fact, I would ask you to do that in just a second. So while that's percolating, let me tell you a little bit more about me and why it's a good idea to listen to the content I'm going to give you today. So as you see on there, this is my kids. My son's a little older right now. He's in college. My daughter is about 5 years old, but I still love this picture for the kids being young, and they actually listened to me at that age. They were still listening to me. But see, I'm a daddy, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a self-publishing strategist, a high-performance strategist. I'm definitely a nerd, but I'm also an athlete. And one other thing here, as I wrote about in my first book, and being more awareness about what it means to really transform your life, is I'm a grateful recovering addict. Yeah, I spent several years trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. And I went through so many different changes. Go to the next slide for me. I went through so many changes until I really fell out that this idea of being only one book away. You see, my first book was full of mistakes, but I wrote it anywhere, and here's how it happened. I remember sitting on this hard bench with my head in my hands trying to figure out, how did this happen again? How did I find myself in the same position? I told myself I wasn't going to allow this to happen again. But there I was sitting on a hard jail cell bench facing 12 years of prison time. And I had to figure out, how am I going to change my life? I'd made all these prayers to God about, if I get out of here, if I get through this, I'm going to change, I'm going to do things differently. And I stayed true to to that promise that I'd made with God. And I started changing myself mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually while I was in jail. And as I started going through these changes, I started thinking to myself, how am I going to help my kids? I wish I could do something for them to say, don't go this route with Daddy went later on in his life, but here's how you can really change and how to become a better person, a better human. So I decided I was going to write this book. And since I was in jail, I really couldn't do anything more than write it out by hand. So I got this yellow legal pad, and I folded the pages together. I folded them in half, and on the outside, I started grinding this cover on there, and I put a table of contents in it, and I wrote out my little story and my points and principles that I said for my kids to be able to live a better life, and I was done. I was happy. So a couple months later, I was actually released from jail, and about a couple months after that, I decided I needed to type this book up to make it official. And after I finished typing everything up, I had 20 pages of glory. I loved it. I was done. I was an author. And I proceeded to do nothing with that for about 18 months. And that's when I found myself inside of a women's empowerment event. Yes, I said a women's empowerment event. At the women's empowerment event, there was a woman on stage who was talking about going and changing your life by living by certain spiritual business principles. And I wanted to get on a call with her, so I booked a call with her. And on that call, she started telling me these things about about how I could help me build my business. And when she asked me, what do you want to do in your business? And I told her about productivity and all these other things. And when she heard my story about being a recovering addict and facing 12 years of prison and having my spine severed in half by a truck and still being able to walk, she told me one thing: to stop taking God's glory. And she challenged me to go on social media and tell that authentic story so I can change people's lives. And I know there's some of you who are hearing me right now that are thinking, I have a story that could change people's lives if I only had a way of getting it out to more people than just on my social media channel. Well, because of that challenge, I went out and I started my first LLC. I published that book about 4 months later. And then from that book, I started getting paid to speak. I started getting better stages. And not only that, I had the confidence to ask for people to pay me for being a coach, for being their coach. There's something about having that book that shifted everything, not only in my authority, in my industry, but not only in that, but also in myself, that says I demand more, I am worth more, I am an expert, I know what I'm doing. And I should be paid accordingly. Next slide. So I want you to remember that the commitment that I asked for you. You see the little design there. And I asked you to do this as soon as we get off this call, I'm not going to ask you to move off of here now, but I want you to ask you to type this out and send this text out to your closest friends, your family, and say, I'm the author of an upcoming book on, and fill in the blank. Is it going to be a book on social media design? Is it going to be a book on how to do better at, I don't know, in health? Is it going to be a book that's going to help people to become better parents? Is it going to be a book on how to have better marriages and have more communication? Whatever that book is, whatever your area is. And that doesn't just go for people who are in the services industries, but those who have product businesses. If there's something that you're offering, there's something that people need to know in order for them to understand how to use your product better. So I'm the author of an upcoming book on, and I'm asking you to make that commitment to yourself. Send that text out to some people and watch the responses that you're going to get. You're going to love it. And that's the beginning of embracing becoming an author. Next slide. So we're going to get into the 9 mistakes first-time authors make. And over this, you're going to learn, you also learn how to avoid them. And if you stay on to the end, here's my promise to you. I'll give you a ticket to an upcoming virtual event where I'll teach you how I made $3,000 before I published my latest book. Before I published the book, there's nothing out, but I still profited from that book. I'm going to show you, I'm going to teach you that. I'm going to give you a ticket to get to the virtual event where I'll teach you how I did that. Now, if I keep my promise to you, and I ask you this, is it all right if I make a cashless offer? That means you won't come out of pocket for anything, okay? You won't come out of pocket for anything. I'm going to assume that we're good there because I don't see anybody saying no. So I'm going to go forward with the idea that it's cool if I do that. So move next slide, please. I want to make it clear, do you accept my deal? But here's the thing I want you to remember. You see the little prompt there. You put in the comments, yes, I accept the deal. I see you out there, Christian, saying, yes, I accept it. Here's the question. Here's a statement I want is the background to everything we're going to go into today. Everything we're going to go into today, here's the background, the backdrop for this. Perfectionism is rarely profitable. Remember that. You can tweet that out later. Perfectionism is rarely profitable. That's by Dan S. Kennedy. Dan Kennedy is one of the great copywriters and marketers of our generation. He taught a lot of the great marketers right now. They're still working, still alive. He was their mentor, right? He was the mentor to the mentors, right, if you will. And he wrote a lot of books that helped grow his business. The first book he wrote was called The Ultimate Sales Letter, okay? The Ultimate Sales Letter. And that book launched his business to where he became a multi-million dollar businessman and helped create multiple millions of dollars for other businesses that he wrote his copywriting for. The book on how to write sales letter launched everything for him. Okay? But he knew, and he had his own theories, that I don't need to make everything perfect. I need to make it good enough. But there's still some mistakes that you can make that'll stop you from making a good book. Okay? I see you, Carly. That is a great quote. I had to put it in there. All right. So here's a breakdown. Here's the genius model I have for you, and we're going to break down these ideas. I want you to see in the center there the 3 big words in the center of each of those circles. That is write fast, edit slow, profit now. And that's where it correlates back to those ideas. Secret number 1 is about to write fast, turn off autocorrect. Secret number 2 is to edit slow and show no mercy. Secret number 3 is to profit now and listen to wealthy authors. Now here's the thing. If you just write fast and you edit slow, then you're going to probably get your messaging right, okay? But that doesn't mean the book's going to be profitable. If you write fast and you think about the profiting from the very beginning, you're probably going to write a book that's positioned well, but you're going to have a problem. It's probably going to be writing a bad book because it's not edited properly. Now, if you think about profit from the beginning and you have the right persuasive writing in there from the editing, you can write a compelling book, but you're probably not going to finish because you don't have everything that understanding the ideal reader and focusing on one solution. So let's break these things down as we go forward. Move to the next slide, please. So secret number one is to write fast, turn off autocorrect. And most people will never finish their manuscript because they're making these three mistakes that we're going to go over here in just 1 second. Go to the next slide. Let's kick it off. Mistake number two, remember mistake number one was not committing. You had to set everything up. Mistake number two is not thinking profit first. And here's what I mean by that. You have to set your intention. What do you want this book to do for you? Decide what you want your book to do for you from the beginning. Now, I understand that you're like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be writing for some type of person to help me, to help them. But here's the idea. When you think about what you want this book to do for you from the beginning, do you want to get on more stages? Do you want it to be a marketing piece for people to understand what your product is? Do you want it to be a way to bring people into your funnel? What do you want this book to do? You want it to help you get onto Oprah Winfrey Show. What do you want this book to do for you? You have to decide that from the beginning so that when you go into the writing portion of it, you know what to keep in there and what not to keep in there, what offers to make, what suggestions to make in your book. Otherwise, you're writing a book that does not have a purpose. Know from the beginning how you're going to profit. And here's the thing I want you to realize, write this down, secure the bag. That's what some of the youngsters say nowadays, secure the bag. What that means is make sure you're going to get what you're saying you want to get, right? Now, the BAG, bag, that's an acronym for understanding what profit means. The definition of profit means to have a benefit, an advantage, or a gain. A benefit, advantage, or a gain. Okay? So you have to decide what your benefit, advantage, or gain is from the beginning. Next slide. Mistake number three is not knowing your ideal reader and customer. Now, the solution here is to start gathering your information from the beginning. And I have a simple strategy called the 6WH questions. And the 6WH questions helps you identify exactly who your ideal reader is, your market you're going to go into. You're going to decide what you're going to offer them. What is your system that you're going to be talking to them about? You're going to understand what is the transformation that you're going to have for your reader of your book. Because they're going to have a transformation from your book, or it's just good information. If you have good information that does not offer a transformation, people are not going to do anything with your book. They must have a transformation. And we decide that in the beginning in the gathering step of writing your book. Next slide. Mistake number four is that you're not offering one solution to one problem. And the idea here is to make sure you narrow down what you are doing. And the best way to do that is understand what your signature system is and offering that signature system. See, I understand that you have all these solutions to different people's problems. People are complex, and your product or your service can offer solutions to different aspects of their life or whatever area of the industry that you're in. However, your book needs to follow one principle: one solution for one ideal reader with one message. One solution, one ideal reader, one message. That's it, because you always have more books. You can come up with the next book that provides the next solution. But nowadays, people don't want to get a book that has everything in a encyclopedia. They want to get a book and get it done, get through the book very quickly and solve one specific problem. Here's how I know. When you go to Amazon, do you type in a problem that you want to solve for one thing? Yes, you do. You don't go in and say, I need to know everything there is to know about productivity. No, you go in and say, I need to get more organized. Books on getting organized. You go in and say, I need to stop procrastinating. How do I stop procrastinating? You search for a specific topic. And here's the thing, the whole umbrella idea of productivity has many areas. You can write a book in each one of those. People coming in for one solution. Give them that one solution, and that's based upon your signature system for that solution. Okay? Next slide. As to sum everything up here in the first section here, write fast. You want to know your intent, know your ideal reader, and know your one solution. If you do that, you will be able to write fast, and you will be able to finish your book because you have everything streamlined. Next slide. So right now, I'm going to ask you to put it in the comments. What is your biggest lesson so far? You see the symbol. I'm checking back in with you. Your biggest lesson so far, what is that? Put that in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll follow back up on those very shortly. Go to your next slide. Secret number 2 is to edit slow and show no mercy. You show no mercy when you're editing. It doesn't matter what you've written down there. Show no mercy. Because even if you finish your manuscript, it's possible to write a bad book due to the next 3 mistakes. Okay? Due to the next 3 mistakes, you still write a bad book. So let's go on to the next slide. Mistake number 5. You have no way to overcome writer's block. And I get this. I don't believe in writer's block too much anymore. I've been talking about that for about the last 2 weeks right now. Because the thing about writer's block is it's typically because you have poor preparation. So the solution here, I talk about authoring your book. And the way you author your book in less than 4 hours is to use brain prompts from an outline. What this simply means, simple way of saying is you turn your outline into questions because that's the way your brain works. It likes to answer questions. So if I ask you a question, you're going to give me an answer. And if I'm asking about a subject you're passionate about, that you love talking about, and that you are an expert in, you're going to be able to give me answers to those questions. If you have a list of questions in front of you, your book becomes easy to write. So how do we overcome writer's block? Use brain prompts. And it keeps you on point for what you need to do. Next slide. Mistake number 6 is that you're not using persuasive writing. And this is where we get into refining what you're doing. See, when you write your book and you're initially writing the book, everything out, you're just getting all your ideas onto paper. You're writing everything out as it comes. You're not doing any editing. You have to keep that out of your head. As we talked about in secret number 1, no autocorrect. You're not correcting anything. You're not correcting anything. That's what you're saving for the editing phase. Okay, so this solution here is to start touching up your work. And I suggest you use the story framework. Now, the story framework stands for for each chapter is to have a statement, tell a story, provide your objections, your obstacles, your objectives for that chapter, review the chapter, and then have your ensuing step. Okay, what's your ensuing step? Meaning what's going on, what's setting up the next chapter. That's how each chapter should be set up, so people are continually being engaged and led on to the next chapter. Okay, now the story framework goes even further. This is persuasive writing because it deals with the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. As you're telling story, you're giving them imagery, and you're dealing with objections as you're telling the story framework. And the entire book is set up the same way. From the beginning chapter and introduction, making your statement, telling your story about yourself, and the content of the book, the main bulk of your book is your objections, the objectives and the obstacles. And you're reviewing towards the end of the book is telling people how they can find more and how they can continue on the conversation with you. Which takes me, I'm gonna come back to in just 1 second in a later mistake. Go on to the next step. Next slide, please. Mistake number 7 is that you're not using effective titles. Now, yes, your book is being judged. It's being judged. So you got to make it unique. And one of the best ways of doing this is to research bestsellers and keywords. Yes, if it's already selling, you don't have to do much more than mimic or look at the way things have already been selling and change your titles to fit what your content is to what people have already found that they like. Okay? If this is the first step to someone grabbing your book, they're going to be reading, flipping through their pages, flipping through all of the books that come up on their feed or in a bookstore eventually, and they're looking at titles. If your title does not stand out to them and speak to them, they will not pull your book off the shelf. They will not click on that image. They will not look at the content, the table of contents for that book. So you have to have a unique title. Now, not only the title, but the subtitle. Okay? This is just a small piece of what it means to make your book unique, but it's one of the most important pieces is to have a great and effective title that makes people say, tell me more. Okay? Next slide. And as a recap of this section here, and edit slowly, that is, you want to stay on point with your theme, Stay engaging with your content, like using that story framework, and stay top of mind with your titles. And even if people don't click on the book right then, they're going to remember that title and come back when they see it again. The more times they see it, they're like, oh, shoot. How many times have you looked at a title of a book before you finally went and bought it? But you remembered that title, right? That's what a good title does. It's sticky. It stays with you, okay? And they might refer your book to someone else because of the title. It's easy to remember, okay? Effective titles do that. Next slide. Secret number 3 is we're wrapping up here. Profit now means you're going to listen to wealthy authors. See, the final secret is about writing the right book. And these 3 mistakes could cost you your time, your money, your energy because you didn't plan for them from the beginning. As it says, you're going to think profit first. So let's go into that first slide. Mistake number 8 is that you don't give a way to continue the conversation. I see this so often. Your book is a marketing piece for your business. So you must offer a way for people to continue the conversation that you've already had with them. You think about it, y'all. When you're reading a book, don't you hear, you're actually hearing the person talking to you in your head. A great book, you hear the author is talking to you in your head. And if you're listening to an audiobook, you're literally hearing them in your head, right? So you want to think about the reviews that you're seeing. You want to make an offer based on the feedback and the people are giving about other books in your area, that you're working with, that you're trying to publish your book in. But also, when you get reviews back from the people who are going to read your book ahead of time, you listen to their feedback and you make adjustments to the book. But also, that's how you offer, like, all right, here's what my next offer is. So for my second book, I was talking to people on this second book on overcoming procrastination. The reviews I got back was people wanted to know, they just wanted an outline, some quick tips on how to do the ideas that I talked about overcoming procrastination. So what I offered them as a free download not only was an audio book, but along with that audio book, they got some of the downloads on what I called the Make It Happen Pack was part of the audiobook download because of the people saying they wanted to have that in one page as opposed to flipping through the book. So that continues the conversation. Now they become part of my subscriber list. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Mistake number 9, you don't market consistently. And I made this mistake from the beginning. I wrote the book and said, everybody's going to come. And so many of us do that as beginning authors. We write the book and we sit and wait. It's a great cover. They're going to buy it. It's a great title. They're going to buy it. No, no, no. This part, the solution here is to make to exhibit your book or make an exhibition of your book. And I do that using the 4 C's. That is creating new content every day to put out. I'm going to be connecting with new people about my book and offering the content from my book to them. I'm going to be trying to close somebody, meaning I'm trying to pull them off of social media or trying to get them onto a call or trying to make an appointment or presentation with them every day. And the other C is my core habit. What am I doing to build up a core thing for my business, a core skill for my business, whether that's marketing, whether that's presenting, whether that's writing, whatever that is. I'm going to do those 4 C's so that I can be better at exhibiting and marketing my product, my book, which is the lead-in to anything that most of the things that I offer. Okay? You have to market consistently. That doesn't mean for the very beginning your first book comes out. That means you're marketing that book year in, year out because it creates so much demand for what you're doing and helps people to get qualified for your products and services so much better than anything else that I know of. Next slide. The final mistake here, mistake number 10, is that you don't leverage your book. And the problem here is I talk about the solution being to get booked. And book means booked on stages, you're booking appointments, you're getting booking all types all over the place. You want to use the book to build income streams. Use the book to build income streams. And I'm going to give you a slide to show you exactly what that means. Next slide. So the recap here on profiting now. You want to develop offers that are based on feedback. Develop marketing plans that are based on feedback. You want to develop products and services that are based on what? Feedback. Next slide. So put it in the comments here for you. You see the little sign there, the little symbol there. what surprised you about the 10 mistakes I gave? I gave you a bonus, so what surprised you about these 10 mistakes? Go ahead and put those in the comments, and we'll get to those in just a second. Next slide, please. So I asked you if I've only given you a glimpse of what everything is, so I want to know if I kept my promise to you. And if I kept my promise to you of presenting you 9 mistakes, and I've also kept the promise of offering you 9 solutions, okay, for those mistakes. If I kept my promise, then I want to just take this time here, just a few moments here, just about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, to make this simple little offer to you, a cashless offer, okay? So I have no objections. I'm gonna go forward. Next slide. See, this is one of the reviews I have on the book out here on how to write your first book in less than 4 hours. And she says here at the end, now I know that I can write an actual book to help people change their lives. It doesn't seem like the daunting task I once thought it would be. I'm so excited to write my book. And this lady has reached out to me. She's in the middle of writing her cookbook so that she can start helping in the health industry, okay? So the book itself is helping, but now think about, again, having someone to work with. Next slide, please. What's presenting in that book and what I'll present to you on this webinar that I'm about to offer to you, this virtual event ticket, is a signature book profit formula. If you look back over the mistakes, we went through all 10 of the pieces. Next slide there, Ryan. Thank you. You see all 10 of the steps there. They correlate to all 10 of the mistakes. You set up your intent to gather, narrow, author, touch up, unique, reviews, exhibit, and book. That are the 10 steps of the signature book formula, okay? And in the bottom, you see there are 19 plus ways to get paid. Now, what we're going to do here is that you're going to increase speaking fees. When you write this right book using this formula, you're going to increase your speaking fees. You're going to have more qualified leads, and you're going to create new streams of income by following the signature book formula. All right, go ahead, next slide. So I want to give you that bonus, the bonus I promised to you, and there it is here. This is a webinar coming up here, live webinar, y'all, live webinar on how to write your first book in less than 4 hours and make thousands of dollars before you even publish. Now, for those of you who are live right now, that page is not quite up for you right now, but those of you who are going to watching the replay, the webinar, that page will be up for you to go ahead and sign up for that. So anyone who's watching her live that wants to actually go dive deeper into the content of this webinar, definitely send me an email. That's going to be at fortune@thoughtfortunepress.com. Don't worry, I have a slide a little later so you can see that, and I'll hold that up, okay? But in this webinar, go to the next slide, please. The question I want to ask for you right now is what's it worth to write your book? How much time have you wasted presenting to people who are not your ideal prospects? Think about that. And think about this. How much money have you wasted on marketing that doesn't pre-qualify your leads for you? Think about that. Next question. How much energy have you spent trying to share your message and people still don't understand why you're different and one of the best at what you do? Your book does that all for you. Next slide. Yeah, how to write your book in less than 4 hours and make $1,000 before you get finished is going to go through secret number one is the best authority builder and marketing material all in one. Secret number 2 is the system I use to publish a book in 30 days. From idea to publish in 30 days. Secret number 3 is how I made $3,000 before I published a word. Okay? Go on to the next slide there. And guys, this again is a live webinar. This is not a recording. I will actually be present presenting live, which means you can ask me questions directly. Next slide. This next event is going to be this coming Thursday again. My system's only going to allow so many people on the call. So you got to go ahead and get your e-ticket now. Again, for those who are live, you're going to have to email me at thoughtfortunepress.com. Otherwise, go to thoughtfortunepress.com/webinar. Next slide. And a lot of the webinars, y'all, are going to be, I know there's a lot of webinars out there, and I watch a ton of them, but I promise you, this will not be a waste of your time. I just want to make sure I made that promise to you. This will not be a waste of your time. you'll get off this webinar with at least one aha that will change your business forever. I promise you that. I will make that promise. What I'm going to teach you on that webinar, it's going to blow your mind. You're like, what? How did you do that? I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. You got to get in the webinar. Next slide. So this is open up for Q&A. I know we have about 15, maybe a little more minutes for Q&A. Go ahead and Ryan, if you want to go ahead and answer those questions. I know we have some questions, and I'll be as prompt as possible with answering the questions.
Yes, our first question is from Christian Tombers, and his question is it okay to promote your next book and previous books in your book?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you look at people who have kind of prolific writers or have written several books, if you look in the beginning or at the end of it, they'll have a section in there, a page in there that says other books. So that'll tell you the books that they've already published, right? So they want to market you to go back to those other books. But some authors will also show in there towards the bottom of that page, upcoming books. So you have the upcoming books that'll tell you these books are coming next. You definitely want to promote those so people know you have more than one book. The more people's books of your books that people consume, the more they get to know you, like you, and trust you, and the more likely they'll become more qualified to buy whatever product or service you have, or to recommend you to someone else. Great question.
Awesome. Our second question is from Carly Henry, who is here at Open in Indiana with us. And her question is, when it comes to using brain prompts for writing, is there any more advice on how to get started?
Oh, absolutely. So if you go to my website, thoughtfortunepress.com, you actually get prompted with a free download there on what I have called the 4 Brains template. And so that template will actually walk you through not only how to get the brain prompts, but how to get to the spot where you are actually outlining your book and how to break all that down. There's a process. In the beginning, I was using what I call brain dump, then moving into a brain storm, turning that into a brain map, and then turning that into a brain prompt. So that's all included inside of that free download. You can grab that on the website there. And I've been talking about it for a minute there. So again, yeah, it's not difficult to turn your outline into questions. For example, just to give a simple one. So if I was doing a book on exercise, right? And so I say that one of my outline points is to exercise regularly. So to turn that into a question, I would say something like, why is it important to exercise regularly? What exercises do I need to do during regular exercise? And from those questions, when it's time for me to write, then I just answer those questions. Boom, the ideas are going to come to me immediately. Like they're coming to me right now, and I'm not even in that, but we all have ideas about certain topics, right? Hope that helps there. Grab the download. It'll definitely walk you through all of that.
And Fortune, I have a question for you here. When it comes to writing, is there a specific device that you enjoy using, or do you prefer pen and paper? What's your favorite way to get started?
Ooh, there's all of it. It's okay. So I like to write. There's something about having, for me to do what do you call it? Ideation for thinking. My mentors taught me to think on paper, and so I've taken that to heart. Where paper might actually be my whiteboard. I love having a whiteboard. I have whiteboards on every floor in my house because I might have an idea and I need to go out there and draw it out while it's fresh in my mind, right? So I do the same thing in my journals and so forth. I have a process that I have called pink sheets. I learned it from another gentleman named Mark. I can't think of his last name. But anyway, named Mark, called pink sheets. And it's a way of turning your intellectual property, which is your ideas, and turning it into metaphors and models, coming up with stories, coming up with your steps and your processes, coming up with quotes. It's a way of organizing your thoughts so that when it comes time to write, you have everything for you. And I do that freehand. I write that out first. Now, moving forward from there, I like to record. I've done this several different ways. I like to record my responses to my questions. So I can record them, get it transcribed, and then start working on editing and have an editor finish up some of the things, right? As far as creating the content. I've also done live streams, and I have a strategy on people that want to how to turn your live streams into a best-selling book. You can literally go on and live stream your content. Okay, I have 2 books to come out. I'm sitting here waiting for the timing to do them for when I'm going to publish those books, because I have some other things I'm doing. An anthology coming up also for myself as of this recording. But I did them as live streams. I went on live, and here's the great thing about using a live stream is that people then turn around and ask you questions. So now you know how to change your content to answer those questions when you actually go to creating your content, right? The other piece is to sit down and writing down for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, setting yourself a timer. This is part of that setup piece. And step 1 is deciding how long you're going to write, where you're going to write. And that means setting up the environment. See, there's something about environment that helps you get into the mode. So here's what, and to give you an understanding what that means is when you walk into the kitchen and you've forgotten what you went in there to go in there for, the reason why that is because when you thought about what you wanted to go in the kitchen for, you were in a different room. And when you have broken the threshold to the kitchen, your brain has said, oh, we're in a new environment, and it switches off. And that's why when you step back into the other environment, your brain remembers, oh, that's what we're going to do. Okay? The same thing happens if you start setting an environment for you to start writing and creativity. So I have what I call the lab down in the basement. When I go into the lab and I close the door and I have my little cup of drink right next to me, my little coffee or mushroom coffee or tea or whatever it is right there, warm drink, whether I drink it or not, it's there, right? And I put on my little music and I put on my noise canceling headphones. I go into creative space. Boom, immediately. Within a couple minutes, I'm in creative mode. When I step out of there, I'm in daddy mode, thinking mode, all the other type of stuff. The same thing happens. You got to create that environment.
Great. So we have another question here from John Nystrom, and his question is: many obvious connects with fiction writing, but how do you get feedback for edit and marketing without a developed customer base?
So part of that process of putting some of your content out to show that you're writing something, that is going to start helping you develop your customer base. See, they're going to get glimpses of the content, and you're going to get feedback from them. People saying, what do you think about this? What do you think they should do? You ask questions. You start creating engagement in your content. I know, Ryan, this is one of the things that you're pretty good at doing is creating engagement in content, right? So you're going to post a little snippet of what you're doing, and people are going to start responding to that. And as they start responding to that, you can follow up with them in your direct message as a way to start saying, hey, do you like this content? I'd love to continue getting more confident. I'd like to get more content to you. I'd like to continue to get your feedback. And now what you may do is, hey, if they answer 2 or 3 times or response to what you posted, now you can invite them to be a part of your launch team. See, they've already actively engaged, and now they become someone that becomes part of your team of launching the book, and now they get to see more of your content and really get you feedback, and now they start blasting it to their social media. So now you get introduced to their team, to their people that they know, like and trust them, and that you don't have any connections to, because now you invited them to your launch team. That's one of the strategies you definitely want to start doing, is having a launch team, and there's a way for you to do that.
And we have a second question from Christian Tombers. He says I intend to have QR codes printed in the book pages that link to videos of me discussing the topic on the page. What are your thoughts?
No, that's definitely okay to do that. Think about the fact of, if you're going to do an ebook for that, then it's going to look just kind of silly or pointless to have the QR code unless they're going to have like their tablet and they're going to take their phone and click on that, right? So you can have both of those in there. Even if it's on the ebook, you have the QR code, but you still have your link under that. Because there's also going to be people who don't believe in the QR code. They're not going to click and they're not going to use that. They don't have the app download. They don't know how to use the app. They don't want to use the app. Right, so you still definitely want to have your link on that page so they can actually get access to whatever it is, the video that you have for them. Okay, well, QR codes are great. So a great way for people to go to content immediately. So once they They take their screenshot or whatnot of it from QR code on there, pulls up on their phone, they don't have to find anything. It's easy, they don't have to type anything in, so it definitely works. Excellent, excellent. Will you go to the next slide, so I want to make sure they see my email. As a matter of fact, go down 2 slides. That way they can see my email here, those who are on the live. And then how to connect with me, it's all on that last slide there. Excellent. All right. So, yeah, there you go. Okay, so again, I want to thank y'all for being here. You see on that slide there my email to send those questions. If you want to get on to that webinar is coming up this week, go to send me an email to fortune@thoughtfortunepress.com, and I'll make sure I get you the link to be a part of that webinar. We go over those 3 secrets, and I teach you how I made that $3,000. Before I even published the book, I made the money from a new client from the outline of the book. Okay, that's how powerful the books are. But you can also find me all over social media at darlandofortune.com. Again, that's darlando, and Arlando, it's like Orlando, Florida, but with an A. So Arlando Fortune. I also have a podcast, y'all. You literally can go on a podcast and listen to authors from all over the world. I have people in Australia. I've interviewed people in all over the place, England and everything else, and all over the U.S. that are authors that are leveraging books to grow their business. So you want some ideas, or you're still on the fence about whether this is really a thing, go ahead and go to Wealthy Author, look for Wealthy Author Podcast, or you can go to thoughtfortunepress.com/podcast, and I'll take you directly to that. Now, it's changing to Wealthy Author Podcast. That's what the new branding is. It has been called Thought Fortunes Podcast. So if you look for Thought Fortunes Podcast, you'll find it immediately. We're just now rebranding as the Wealthy Author Podcast. But go there, listen to it, great content there. And then if anybody that has any questions, like I want to do this now, you can go ahead and go to thoughtfortunepress.com/free call, and we can have a 15-minute free call to discuss what you're trying to do with your book, and if it's time to go ahead and move forward and get you published. Okay, there we are. Why do I see a sad face? Who's putting these sad faces on the screen? I see one more question on there, Ryan.
It looks like we have a question here from Christian again. What are your thoughts on guest articles from other authors?
So you got to explain a little more there. Guest articles from other authors. Are you talking about putting them inside of your books for collaboration? There's definitely nothing wrong with doing that. Even if that means that there's a better way of doing it. You have sort of a guest article. It might be a forward for your book. That might be a great way to do it. Someone who has some clout or has a good following, then they become a forward. You put their name on the outside of your book as a forward by so-and-so, and they write the forward for you. It's pumping you up and talking about why people should be reading your book. That's a great way of using it, so it makes it necessarily a guest article. But if you wanted to create an anthology, that would be more of a guest article type format where you have several authors that are going to put their ideas on a particular subject, and you are the main person collaborating and what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word I'm looking for right now. But basically, aggregating this information. There's a different word. Don't look for aggregating, but putting these ideas together into one book. And yes, if you think about the guest articles a different way, as far as promotion, if they have a great following on their website, then yes, to definitely ask them to promote your book. That's definitely a great way of getting the word out. People promoting you on their book. Yeah, I mean, so that again, Chris, the Chicken Soup for the Soul is a book that's a bunch of ideas from different authors. So yes, all those authors will cross promote their version of the book, and everybody gets paid from that. Your story gets found in there. Yes, that's still an anthology. If you're trying to publish a book for yourself, then and as far as the guest articles, I mean, again, put someone as a forward, ask them to be a forward, or to talk about it on their blog, talk about it on their podcast, talk about it on their social media channel. You be a guesting on their website, guesting on their podcast, guesting on their channel. Though that would be a way to do that. But as far as Chicken Soup for the Soul, that is a group of people coming together for an anthology.
Great. Well, Fortune, I'd like to thank you so much for your presentation today and all of the great information that you've helped share with our viewers. And your information is still up on the screen. And before we end our cast today, is there any last minute advice that you would like to offer for anyone who's still on the fence about writing their first book?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And thank you all for being here to the end. A lot of you have stayed on here all the way through. I appreciate that. The thing here is, again, the idea is that you're only one book away. And I leave that ... because you're one book away from the next breakthrough in your business. You're one book away from the next breakthrough in your marketing. You're one book away from your next breakthrough in your speaking career. And that also might mean that you're one book away from reading the right book that helps you take your business to the next level. Okay? So here's the idea again. If you're thinking about writing this book, it's so easy to get that first book done. We got to break it open. We got to go ahead and get that first book out. And I'm not asking you to write a great book for your first book. I want you to understand what it's like to get published and have that feeling of being an author. And I tell my authors to rub the book on their face, to smell it. And it's so intoxicating to have that book in your hands like, I did this. You can do it. In fact, you can do it in less than 4 hours, and from there, you're going to write more and more books. I tell people it's kind of like getting a tattoo. Once you get that first one done, it's kind of painful, but for some reason, you got to get another one. So, so I'm asking you to go ahead and take that leap, at least get onto that 15-minute call, and let's see if the book is the right time for you to have this book out and what that will look like for you.
Great. Well, Fortune, once again, thank you very much. And to all of our viewers watching today, thank you so much for joining us. This webinar will be available on our website at www.openindiana.com/watch. And don't forget to join us Thursday this week, that is April 9th, for our next live webinar with Cindy Garlock, owner of Organizing Remedies, and her presentation of Curing Mind Clutter, how to let go and be more productive. That'll be streaming here on Facebook Thursday at 4:00 p.m. And then on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, we have on the 14th of April, Building a Great Workplace Culture live webinar, and that will be presented by Danny O'Malia, who's Indy's trusted servant. So once again, thank you so much, everyone, for watching today, and catch our next webinar soon.